My wealthy in-laws forced me to sign a Draconian, hostage-style prenup 20 years ago to protect their fortune from my peasant hands. 2 decades later, they went completely bankrupt. My wife cheated on me, and that exact same ironclad contract left her with nothing but a massive legal bill and a minimum wage retail job. This is the story of how my wife of 20 years threw away our entire life, only to get absolutely legally obliterated by the very same prenuptial agreement her elitist parents forced down my throat. I am using a throwaway account because my kids are active on Reddit, and while they know the broad strokes, they don't need to read the granular details of their mother's spectacular downfall. Here is exactly what went down. Picture this: 20 years ago, I, now 49, was a 29-year-old guy dating a girl named Chloe. I was head over heels, stupidly, blindly in love. At the time, I thought I was hot stuff because I had just gotten promoted to a Tier 2 IT support lead at a mid-sized tech firm. I was making decent, survivable money, driving a beat-up Toyota Corolla that rattled when it hit 60 miles per hour, and living in a tiny one-bedroom apartment where the kitchen and the living room were basically the same square of linoleum. Chloe's parents were on the complete opposite end of the socio-economic spectrum. Her dad, Richard, was a high-powered commercial real estate developer who wore custom-tailored suits and watches that cost more than my annual salary. Her mom, Eleanor, drove a brand-new Porsche Cayenne that she swapped out every 2 years just because she liked the new leather smell. They lived in a gated community in a mansion that looked like it belonged on a television show about corrupt politicians. The first time I met them, I showed up in my absolute best business casual attire, a pair of slacks and a button-down shirt I had ironed 3 times. Richard gave me a handshake that felt like a dominance test. "Ah, the computer repairman," he said, looking at me like I had just tracked mud onto his pristine marble foyer. "Buddy, I was a network administrator, not the guy fixing screens at the mall," but I bit my tongue. Dinner was an agonizing theatrical production. There were multiple forks, crystal glasses, and a silent housekeeper replacing our plates. Eleanor interrogated me about my 5-year financial plan and my stock portfolio. "Lady, my portfolio consisted of putting $50 a month into a savings account and praying my transmission wouldn't explode." But the real kicker happened about 6 months before I planned to propose. We were at their country club for a Labor Day event. Richard pulled me aside into the mahogany-paneled library. "Son, I want to discuss asset protection," he said. I genuinely thought he was going to offer me investment advice. I was wrong. The man pulled out a thick, leather-bound portfolio and started lecturing me about prenuptial agreements like he was explaining basic hygiene to a toddler. "It's just standard business. We have a legacy to protect. Nothing personal," he said smoothly. When I finally proposed to Chloe with a ring I financed over 2 years because I lived in reality, her parents immediately invited me over for a celebratory dinner. I showed up expecting champagne. Instead, I walked into their formal dining room to find their high-priced family attorney sitting at the head of the table with a massive, 3-ring binder. This binder was a weapon of mass destruction. It had color-coded tabs. The lawyer spoke in that calm, sterile voice designed to make you feel like you have no choices. "This is a standard protective measure for both parties," he lied, sliding the binder across the table. I flipped through it, and it was the most aggressive legal document I had ever seen. Blue tab: absolute separation of premarital property. Red tab: complete waiver of spousal maintenance, alimony if the marriage dissolves after the children come of age. Orange tab: the infidelity clause. Yes, they actually put an infidelity clause in there. It stated that if either party committed adultery, proven by a preponderance of the evidence, that party completely forfeits any right to request attorney's fees, and must pay the legal fees of the non-cheating party. Richard sat there sipping an aged scotch, acting like this was a totally normal Tuesday. "What's yours is yours, what's hers is hers. Clean, efficient, and bulletproof," he said. Eleanor smiled thinly. "Well, if you aren't planning to cheat or steal her inheritance, it really shouldn't matter, right?" It was a straight-up hostage negotiation. "Sign the paperwork, or the wedding is off." I called my best friend that night, fuming. His advice was blunt: "Dude, you don't care about their money, and you're not going to cheat. Just sign the damn thing and marry the woman you love." So, I hired a cheap lawyer working out of a strip mall to review it. He told me it was incredibly aggressive and heavily favored her family's wealth, but it was perfectly legal. I was young, naive, and in love. I signed it. Famous last words. We got married. The wedding was entirely hijacked by her parents, who turned it into a networking event for their rich friends, but I didn't care. I got the girl. For the first decade, life was genuinely great. We moved into a modest starter home in a quiet, middle-class suburb. It was built in the 90s, needed some love, but it was ours. Then the kids arrived. Mia came first, then Leo 3 years later, then Sam 2 years after that. Chloe wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, and since my career was taking off, we agreed it made sense. I became the absolute workhorse of the family. I was up at 5 a.m., at my desk by 7 a.m., constantly upskilling. I climbed the ladder aggressively: IT manager, director of IT, and eventually director of cybersecurity. Every promotion meant more stress and longer hours, but it also meant significantly more money. I maxed out my 401k every single year. I dumped every bonus and tax return directly into our mortgage. I learned how to do my own plumbing, electrical work, and landscaping via YouTube to save cash. My routine was relentless: work, come home, help with math homework, fix whatever was broken in the house, collapse, and repeat. When interest rates plummeted, I refinanced our 30-year mortgage into a 15-year loan. We paid off our $550,000 house entirely by our 16th wedding anniversary. No mortgage, zero debt. Chloe thought I was a financial wizard. Her parents even started to tolerate me. They would visit, bring the kids lavish gifts, and make backhanded compliments about our quaint little neighborhood. Richard would occasionally pat my shoulder and say, "You've provided good stability." The prenup became a running joke at Thanksgiving. "Thank God we got that paperwork out of the way," Eleanor would laugh. I just smiled and ate my turkey. We had a system. I handled the money, the maintenance, and the heavy lifting. Chloe handled the kids' schedules, the school PTA, and the household logistics. It worked. I thought we were building a fortress. Then, about 4 years ago, everything went completely sideways. It started with her parents. Around year 16 of our marriage, the commercial real estate market took a weird hit, and Richard got caught over-leveraged in a massive, multi-million-dollar development project that went bankrupt. Suddenly, the custom suits disappeared. The country club membership was quietly cancelled. The Porsche was traded in for a sensible Honda CR-V. Turns out, playing the billionaire tycoon is easy until the bank calls in your loans. They were hit with multiple catastrophic lawsuits from investors. Their liquid assets were entirely wiped out. They were bleeding money on white shoe defense attorneys billing $1,000 an hour just to keep Richard out of federal prison. Chloe took her parents' financial ruin incredibly hard. She had grown up believing her family was untouchable royalty. Seeing them downsize to a rented condo broke her reality. She started spending all her time over there, consoling them, complaining about how unfair the world was. Simultaneously, our kids were getting older. Mia was in college, Leo was a senior in high school, and Sam was a sophomore. The intense, hands-on phase of parenting was over. Chloe suddenly had a lot of free time, and she entered her finding herself phase. First, it was a local wine tasting club, then it was joining the board of a local art charity. Then it was networking events in the city. I'd come home exhausted from a 50-hour work week, and she'd be throwing on an expensive dress and rushing out the door. "Dinner is in the fridge, don't wait up," became her new catchphrase. I handled it. I fed the boys, checked their homework, and sat in the quiet living room wondering where my wife was at 11:30 p.m. on a Tuesday. When I finally brought it up, she erupted. "I spent 16 years wiping noses and cleaning your house. I deserve to have my own life and identity," she screamed. She started gaslighting me constantly. If I didn't notice she bought new curtains, I was neglectful. If I asked her to stay home for a family movie night, I was controlling. Our sex life completely evaporated. We were roommates who occasionally argued about the grocery bill. I tried booking weekend getaways, buying flowers, suggesting couples counseling. She shot it all down, claiming she was just exhausted by my expectations. The irony? Her parents suddenly loved me. Now that I was a high-earning director with a paid-off house and a massive retirement account, they treated me like their favorite son. Richard constantly asked me for cybersecurity consulting advice that he clearly didn't need, just trying to stay relevant. Then came the slip-up. Real life isn't like the movies. You rarely catch them in bed. I caught her because she left her phone on the kitchen island while she went upstairs to shower before another one of her charity galas. The screen lit up with a text notification. "Julian, can't wait for tonight. Room 412. Wear the red thing." I didn't scream. I didn't. Not looking for betrayal. You miss the red flags. But when you look closely, it was a bloodbath. Uber rides to a downtown Marriott when she was supposedly at her wine club. Charges at boutique hotel bars. The nail in the coffin was her iPad. She had linked her Apple account to the family iPad we kept in the living room and never bothered to turn off location sharing. I tracked her movements historically. Her charity board meetings were taking place at a residential apartment complex across town. I built a dossier. I compiled spreadsheets, cross-referenced dates, printed hotel receipts, and mapped out a timeline of deception that was so thorough it could have been submitted to the FBI. I tracked down Julian easily. He was a 45-year-old divorced graphic designer she met at one of her art events. His Instagram was full of pictures of his vintage motorcycle and pretentious quotes about finding your true soul's energy, a walking midlife crisis. I gathered 4 weeks of airtight, undeniable evidence. She wasn't just cheating, she was living a complete double life while making me feel like I was a failing husband. Update 1. I took a half day off work and walked into the best family law attorney's office in the city. I handed her my meticulously organized binder of evidence, along with a copy of the prenup her parents had forced me to sign 20 years ago. The lawyer read the prenup, then looked at my evidence, and a slow, predatory smile spread across her face. "Your in-law's attorney drafted this?" she asked, almost laughing. "This is incredibly aggressive. They completely waived spousal maintenance, and this infidelity clause is a loaded gun. With your youngest child turning 18 in a few months, and this mountain of evidence, your wife has absolutely zero leverage. Her parents' paranoia just handed you the easiest divorce of my career. I told her to draft the papers and serve them as aggressively as possible. I want her served at the house, maximum shock value." 2 weeks later, the trap snapped shut. I was at work, sitting in a server migration meeting, when my lawyer texted me, "Service completed at 3:15 p.m. I finished my workday, drove home, and pulled into the driveway. Her car was there, the kids weren't due home from practice for another hour. I unlocked the front door and found Chloe sitting at the kitchen table, the legal documents scattered everywhere. Her mascara was running down her face, and she looked like she had just seen a ghost. "Papers? You had a sheriff serve me papers like a criminal?" she shrieked the second I walked in. "Are you insane? 20 years of marriage and you do this without even talking to me?" I calmly put my briefcase down, walked to the fridge, poured myself a glass of water, and looked at her. "I know about Julian. I know about the Marriott. I know about the apartment. I have the receipts, the texts, and the location data. It's over, Chloe." All the color drained from her face. The righteous anger vanished, replaced by sheer panic. She started hyperventilating, crying, dropping to her knees, begging for counseling. "It was a mistake. It meant nothing. He was just paying attention to me when you were always working." "I was working to pay off the house you're standing in," I replied coldly. "All communication goes through my lawyer now. Do not speak to me unless it's about the kids." I moved into the guest room that night. I kept up a completely normal facade for the kids. I still went to Leo's baseball games. I still helped Sam with his college essays. Chloe, meanwhile, was a frantic mess. She tried to use the kids as pawns, telling them Dad is breaking up the family over a misunderstanding. That's when the nuclear bomb went off at Sam's 17th birthday dinner. We were trying to have a quiet family dinner at home. I ordered pizzas. Mia, 21, was home from college with her new boyfriend. Leo, 18, and Sam, 17, were just trying to eat. Even my bankrupt in-laws were there, looking uncomfortable and glaring at me. Suddenly, Chloe stood up with her glass of wine and tried to give a manipulative toast. "I just want to say, family is the most important thing in the world. And no matter what struggles we go through, forgiveness is what keeps us together. I hope we can all remember that." It was sickening. Leo rolled his eyes. I stared at the wall. But Mia, my oldest, chimed in. "Mom is right. Dad, you really need to stop being so stubborn and work on fixing this family." Before I could even process the disrespect, Sam, my quiet, observant 17-year-old, slammed his soda can down on the table. "Shut up, Mia," Sam snapped, his voice shaking with rage. "You don't care about fixing the family. You just don't want Dad to find out that you've been covering for Mom's affair for the last 6 months." The entire room froze. The silence was deafening. Richard dropped his fork. It clattered against his plate like a gunshot. "What?" I asked, my voice dangerously low. Sam looked right at his sister. "I heard you talking to Mom in the garage last month. I know Mom used your apartment near campus to meet up with that Julian guy when Dad thought she was visiting you. You helped her hide it." Mia burst into tears, stammering out excuses. Chloe tried to grab Sam's arm, but he pulled away in disgust. "You're both liars," Sam said, standing up. "I'm going to my room." "Why?" I stood up. I looked at my in-laws, who looked physically ill. I looked at Mia, who couldn't even make eye contact with me. And I looked at my soon-to-be ex-wife. "Get out," I said quietly. "All of you. Chloe, pack a bag and go with your parents. Mia, take your boyfriend and drive back to campus. Now." Within 10 minutes, the house was empty except for me, Leo, and Sam. I walked upstairs, knocked on Sam's door, and hugged him. "I'm so sorry you had to carry that secret," I told him. He just cried into my shoulder. I didn't speak to Mia for 6 months after that. When someone actively participates in the destruction of their own family, they lose access to me. Boundaries are boundaries. Update 2. It has been 9 months since D-Day. The divorce trial just concluded, and the aftermath is a masterpiece of poetic justice. For months, Chloe and her lawyer tried to fight the prenup. They filed motion after motion, claiming the contract was unconscionable, and signed under duress. My lawyer practically laughed them out of the mediation room. "Your Honor, the respondent's own parents hired the attorney who drafted this document. The petitioner was the one under duress to sign it. When we finally went to trial, it was a bloodbath. My lawyer presented the evidence of the affair like a prosecutor taking down a mob boss. The cell phone records, the hotel receipts, the fact that she involved our daughter in the cover-up. Then, Chloe's lawyer made the fatal mistake of calling Julian to the stand, hoping he would testify that it was just a brief emotional lapse. Instead, Julian, who looked terrified and clearly wanted nothing to do with this mess, testified under oath that they had been sleeping together for over 6 months, and that Chloe had told him she was planning to divorce me and take half my money to fund his graphic design business. The judge looked absolutely disgusted. She didn't even need to deliberate for long. She slammed the gavel down and ruled that the prenuptial agreement was valid, binding, and would be enforced to the absolute letter of the contract. Here is the final math of how her parents' greed destroyed her. Alimony, 0. The prenup strictly waived it, and since Sam is now 18, the court had no grounds to award child support or maintenance. The house was appraised at $550,000. Under the prenup, we were to split the equity, but I was allowed to deduct any post-separation carrying costs. For 9 months, I paid the property taxes, insurance, and utilities entirely on my own, totaling about $3,500 a month. That was $31,500 deducted directly from her half of the equity. Retirement, my 401k, which I had aggressively funded for 20 years, remained almost entirely mine. The prenup protected all premarital and strictly separated accounts. She was entitled to a measly $45,000 from a joint investment account we had opened early in the marriage. Attorney's fees. This was the kill shot. Because the judge ruled she had violated the infidelity clause, the very clause her father insisted upon to keep me in line, she was ordered to pay 100% of my legal fees. My lawyer cost $15,000. Her own lawyer cost $35,000. Chloe walked away with roughly $210,000 from the forced sale of our house, plus the $45,000 from the joint account. Total, $255,000. But then she had to pay the $50,000 in combined legal fees. That dropped her to $205,000. With no job history for 2 decades, no credit score, and no alimony, $205,000 is practically nothing in today's economy. No bank would approve her for a mortgage. 2 weeks after the divorce was finalized, Julian dumped her. Turns out, a middle-aged woman with no income, heavy emotional baggage, and a furious family isn't as fun as a secret, wealthy housewife sneaking around in hotel rooms. Chloe is currently 49 years old, living in the cramped spare bedroom of her parents' rented condo. Because she needs health insurance and an income, she got a job working retail at a high-end clothing boutique at the mall, making $14 an hour. She spends her days folding sweaters for the exact same wealthy women she used to drink wine with at the country club. Her parents are completely broken. Richard had the absolute audacity to call me after the trial, his voice shaking with anger. "You destroyed my daughter's life. We treated you like family." "Richard," I replied, my voice dead calm. "20 years ago, you handed me a binder and told me it was just standard business to protect assets. I'm just honoring your legacy. Have a good life." I hung up, and blocked his number forever. As for me, I took my $280,000 from the house sale and my massive retirement accounts, and I bought a beautiful, modern townhouse closer to my office. I'm making incredible money, my stress levels have plummeted, and I am finally living for myself. Leo is off to college on a partial athletic scholarship. Sam is finishing his senior year and living with me full-time. Mia and I are slowly rebuilding our relationship. She wrote me a 6-page apology letter, admitting she was manipulated by her mother and deeply regretted lying to me. We are doing family therapy, just the 2 of us, and she is making real progress. Sometimes I sit on my new balcony, drinking my morning coffee, and I think about that leather binder from 20 years ago. They tried to build a cage to trap a peasant. Instead, they built the exact trap that caught their own daughter. Life is incredibly good. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel out and allows us to bring you even more awesome stories. Thank you so much for watching.